So let me introduce my guest. And my guest this morning to check if what the president spoke about is your reality are Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante to my immediate right. He's Director, Advocacy and Policy Engagement of the CDD Ghana. Okay. By him is Kojo Oponkroma, Minister for Information and MP Ayirebi. Ofuase Ayirebi Koko. Okay. Ofuase Ayirebi. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Also here is John Jinapo to my extreme left. Abdullah Jinapo, he's member, Finance, Mines and Energy Committees of Parliament. And MP Kushogu. Yape Kushogu. Yes, thank you. Kofi Bento is Senior Vice President of Imani Africa, the Rebel. Good morning, gentlemen, and welcome to Newsfile.
Good morning. Good morning.
All right. So, shall we begin with finding out why the NDC minority in Parliament decided to walk out on such an important day for such an important occasion in Parliament? And after that, we will get into some of the details and sectors of the economy that the president spoke about and deal with those specifics. But let's watch and listen to the NDC minority on how they did what they did.
Correct one.
As you notice, were in black to protest imminent threats to the sustenance of multi-party constitutional democracy and to reject the tyrannical tendencies of President Nana Addo Dankwa and to reject his attempt to interfere with the Electoral Commission to compile a voter register that, as cautiously warned by the U.S. State Department, may lead to voter suppression, particularly in the NDC strongholds. We are particularly alarmed as the President's refusal to recommend the recommendations of the Emil Short Commission report arising out of the Ayawasu West Wagon by-election in January 2019. The President continues to shield his indicted appointees, even as that threatens the peace and stability of our country and its democracy. I mean, what happened in Ayawasu West Wagon was state-sponsored terrorism, when you have people use state authority, state resources, state power to intimidate a political opponent. It's not the same thing as justifying an MPP-NDC rivalry or conflict or fight that may end regrettably or unfortunately. But state-sponsored, can you imagine what will happen to the state and republic? December 7, 2020, if we have a repeat of that in just parts of the country or substantial parts of the country, and we are particularly concerned that many of their vigilantes have found their way into the security agencies, and we doubt whether their loyalty will be to the state or to the New Patriotic Party. If you are comfortable with vigilante groups going into the Ghana Police Service, God bless you. If you are comfortable with the continuous closure of radio, FM station, and television station, and you are dear to democracy, God bless
With
you.
the vigilante groups that you say have infiltrated the security services, the Peace Council is currently taking part in talks between the NDC and the NPP to root out these groups. The NDC has refused to sign the document.
Yeah, because of the insincerity associated with some of these dialogue processes, you openly see MPP vigilantes being absorbed. Today, you didn't see them as you were entering. They offended us off to walk out.
So it's because of them that you walked out?
You saw the SWAT group. You saw them. They were deployed. We can't accept them.
So is it because of the presence of the SWAT group that you walked out?
It is part of our reason. We elevated it and we considered it, but when we saw them, then we say our democracy is in danger.
Right, so that's Haruna Idrisu, minority leader in parliament. They walked out, and yesterday you understood that in the House, questions began to fly left, right, center, whether or not they be allowed to participate in the debate of the report that they did not sit in to listen. Let me begin with the minister. Could you... You say this is like an anathema, unforgivable sin. How so? They have outlined a number of issues for which they needed to use this platform to draw attention to. Potential voter suppression, potential and they say suppression of press freedom, and among other things.
Samson and colleagues, good morning, and good morning to our viewers and to our listeners. I would instead want to move the conversation forward and start with a conclusion. Two things I'd like to say. First is that all of us should be very careful about the things that we do that have the potential to undermine the pillars of our democracy. Second is that I would even urge the majority to be very accommodating of the minority views when the full debate commences on Tuesday. And I do know that I think leadership has already had some conversations to that effect. Indeed, yesterday the majority leader signaled and advised that we will be expecting to have a smooth debate on the floor. Despite my colleagues' abdication of their duties, we need to show maturity. We need to take the higher ground so that we avoid what is becoming a race to the bottom. I've heard colleagues, as I mentioned, who say they will obstruct the minority from expressing their views. But as I've mentioned, we need to quickly move forward so that the real intent of what Article 67 requires us to do can be achieved. Now, there's one question that is, I think, above all been floating. Is the walkout by the minority justified at all in any way? And we have heard the various explanations, including the very latest by my good friend, the Honorable Haruna Idrisu, that the presence of the SWAT team, I think, at the precincts of Parliament is part of their reasons. First of all, I say that this walkout was ill-conceived. It was ill-conceived because you observe the various reasons they have given at every point in time, and it's obvious that even they themselves cannot agree on a specific cogent reason for which they did it. Almost every opportunity, they give a different reason. They change reasons, and I say, in one particular, I say almost every hour they are changing the reason for which they did that. And what now they've resorted to is a post-facto rationalization of what they did. Because if you take the antecedents and the reasons that they gave, it doesn't match the kind of action that they sought to embark on. First of all, when the Honorable Samson Ahe held a press conference at the beginning of the week, the reason that he gave, that they will be staging either a boycott or a walkout because District Assembly's Common Fund allocations had not been paid, sounded absurd. And all of us agree that yes, though at the time the monies hadn't hit their accounts, abdicating Article 67 responsibility is not the answer. And I'll go into that a bit more later. Then later, after they actually received the president, ushered him into the chamber, at the end of the national anthem, came up with a chorus and literally caused this embarrassment. Their first explanation was that they wanted to ignore the president because he has been ignoring some matters that are of interest to them. Then they had another one where they talk about their view that the entire body of recommendations of the Ayawaso West Wogon inquiry report should be implemented. And you would expect that these are legislators, many of them are lawyers, and they know the position of the law on Commission of Inquiry reports. And the fact that The law does not even back that view that once a commission of inquiry has issued a report, simpliciter A to Z, everything in it will be A, accepted, or B, implemented. The law gives room for government to express a certain view and even act on what it chooses or what it agrees with. They have had an opportunity to be in government. The law didn't change then. It hasn't changed now. It's still the same law. They now went on to another excuse that the president has shut down radio stations, another absurd reason because the president has not shut down radio stations. We're all clear. The NCA fined people. They went to court. The court agreed with that class action that the NCA didn't have the power to fine them. And then as a consequential order, or as a consequential explanation, the court said they don't have the power to fine you because by failing to renew the license, you have actually relinquished it. And NCA had to proceed therefrom and then ensure that these stations, which were at that time operating without a license, cease from it.
The NCA's tribunal, electronics tribunal, is what you refer to as the court.
That is.
All right.
Then now they came to the other excuse of the, in fact, there was one about Charlotte to say, why did you sack Charlotte to say, if you, well, and everybody knows the process, the internal challenges of the EC, the petitions, the cross petitions they made against themselves and what happened. Then they come up with a new register. So it's a whole myriad of changing or adding reasons. It was obvious that they wanted to do this. And post facto, they've been finding, reasons for it. But why I say that it is not justified or it doesn't match what they did, even if these arguments have some foundation, it's simple. You see, the mandate of Article 67 is not in the normal course of parliamentary business. The normal course of parliamentary business, the standing orders, regulators. I can come by statement, somebody can bring a motion, we may have a report of a committee, there may be a resolution we are considering. Those are the normal course of parliamentary business. And we disagree on it, there may be walkouts, there may be boycotts associated with that. But if you look at our Constitution, Article 67 imposes an obligation on the President to perform. And my reading of the entire Constitution picks it up even from the principle of probity and accountability. That we must have a platform where the President will account to the country through Parliament for what has transpired, part of which we'll be doing today. So the Article 67 obligation on the President is not in the normal course of parliamentary business. Indeed, in my understanding, it is a constitutional obligation that the President has to perform. And if I just may read, it says the President, it doesn't say may, the President shall, at the beginning of each session of Parliament and before a dissolution of Parliament, deliver to Parliament a message on the state of the nation. So it imposes an obligation on the President, it imposes an obligation on Parliament. Parliament meaning the entire body of Parliament. Indeed, by convention, we have even stepped it up forward by now ensuring that the entire judiciary or the head of the judiciary is present. The Supreme Court judges are present, the scale of justice is brought there. You'll find that the President, staff of office, Vice President, everybody, the former President, everybody, it ceases to be one of our normal parliamentary dances that we are having. And it is a sacred national duty that we are all invited to come perform. So even if these arguments you are making are valid, there are many legal options to express them and to get redress to them than to say that you are abdicating your Article 67 obligation that is imposed on you by the Constitution of our Republic. If you read a bit further into perhaps, maybe I'll start from the oath of office that a member of Parliament takes. And with your permission, let me just read. It says, I, Kojo Oponkom, having been elected a member of Parliament, do in the name of the Almighty God swear that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Republic of Ghana as by law established, that I will uphold, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution, including this Article 67 obligation. And I will faithfully and conscientiously discharge the duties of a member of Parliament. And my understanding is that if you look at the spirit of what the Constitution seeks to do when it comes to constitutional obligations, look at Article 2, the entirety of Article 2. When a person commits an act or fails to commit or to do something that the Constitution requires him to do, you see the severity of the sanctions that the Constitution breathes on it. So Article 67 obligations, in my view respectfully, should not be taken as, a matter that I feel this way or I feel that way. I hear them sometimes say that they are doing what the MPP did in 2013. Two things I'll say to that. First of all, what happened in 2013 is remarkably different from what happened in Parliament, I think, a couple of days ago, in 2013.
How?
The MPP, when it argued that it was challenging the legitimacy of the man, John Dramani Mahama, as president, argued that it could not, it as a party, could not cooperate with him in any of the functions that he seeks to perform in his capacity as president, because they fundamentally disagree with that EC declaration that was made. And therefore, they were proceeding to the Supreme Court to get that declaration. Now, watch what happened. Not only did they not participate generally in that address, they didn't disrupt it. Secondly, you'll find that they continued through with a number of national activities that were to be done by Mr. Mahama at that time, in consonance with what they were doing in court, and argued that they did not want to undermine their court process in any way.
Is that not even worse?
I'll come to that conclusion.
Is that scenario not even worse?
I'll come to that conclusion.
Where you have put your case in court, and your case is being addressed, and then you take this posture.
I'll come to that conclusion. Their view was that by participating in anything that will legitimize his presidency, they were undermining their case in court.
There's no legal basis for that view.
And they did not proceed to disrupt any of his activities nonetheless. Now, you notice that when the court ruled that they were wrong, they quickly went back to now doing business with him as president. In the case of Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, nobody is challenging his presidency. There are no qualms, even from the minority side, about the fact that he's a legitimately elected president. If he's a legitimately elected and sworn in president, you haven't challenged that, and he's coming to Parliament to perform a constitutional duty, and then you raise some of these issues that these are your little issues for which you won't participate, it sounds to everybody as laughable. Now, my final point. If you say that, and in those days, if you say that what the MPP did was wrong, it was such a low standard, it was terrible, how can you, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, when you say that you want to offer a better alternative to governance, now say that you now want to go and stoop so low?
Good question. So you have asked one of my questions to John already.
But most importantly, moving forward, I think leadership is agreeing that, listen, let's put these things behind us. These are things that lower our bars as, MPs.
You may have the opportunity to state this briefly before we end the discussion on this matter. Hold on. I want my other guests to let you hear how they feel and what they think about what you did. Then you come in last to say what you have to say. Now, so, Doc, I mean, as democratic governance watchers, good governance institution, and conduct watchers, is this what Kojo Oponkroma says it is, or is it even worse?
Well, thank you, and good morning to your listeners and your viewers. I think, the first point is that parliamentary boycotts are a legitimate practice within the parliamentary culture, but it is one of the last tools that you want to use. And if you're going to use it, you have to have a very good reason for using it. And it's really even less more about the law than more about building parliamentary culture, democratic culture, and building institutions. So in this instance, I think the NDC was wrong. And just as the MPP was wrong in 2013. Because in all the grievances that the NDC has laid, I think there are very good avenues, for dealing with. These are very substantive issues. If you talk about the register issue, there has to be a forum to deal with that substantively, either through IPAC, other kinds of platforms that have been created, the eminent committees, and so on and so forth. There's a lot to discuss, a lot to address, there. And I think already the moves that have been made, should be commended and should be continued. The same issue with the vigilante matter, because some of the issues they raised around the report from, Ayawas West Wagon, how do we deal with the issues of vigilantism? These are important because we already have a voter registration process just around the corner. We need to deal with those kinds of issues, but I don't think that is the forum, the Peace Council forum is the right kind of forum to deal with that. and then we have to address it. Shutting down radio stations, we have to use the NMC process, and so on. So,
and the NCA process.
Not, I think we haven't.
NMC doesn't intervene. It's the NCA.
Yeah, but I think the issues that if you are just going to address the regulatory component, but when you have to deal with free press, that is an NMC process.
NMC doesn't have power to order the NCA to do what.
But it has a role within the legislation, and that is, there's a particular reason why the Constitution and the statute place the NMC there.
I think persuade, it cannot compel them to do anything.
Sure, but they can create a forum for a discussion around that. So I thought that with all of those kinds of avenues, I didn't think this was the right forum. We really need to build those institutions, no matter what. And that's, you know, the beauty of this kind of annual ritual, is that no matter our disagreement, this is the kind of place that we all come and recognize democracy as, you know, diverse, as sometimes competitive, as conflicting, but we respect each other to allow certain functions to be performed. I don't know, I didn't see the President Mahama there, for instance.
Right.
I thought he should have been there, you know, because no matter what the situation, no matter the disagreements, these are the opportunities. It is for somebody to just smile at you and to say hello, you know, can reduce the tension. So I think we need to take some of these platforms very, very seriously. And if we're going to make a move like that, it has to be very substantive. And I don't think that the reasons that were put forward, that was the action that needed to be taken there. So really, for State of the Nation address,
Kojo says we have to be careful about the things we do that undermine the democracy. And he says it does appear this is a race to the bottom. We must stop it. Is that what you see?
These two parties like to equalize. They always set bad precedents and they follow each other. And that's why it's important for everybody. Everybody have to rein in, you know, because otherwise the next person will come and say, you did it in 2020, and therefore I'm also doing it in 2024.
Yeah, he's saying that that's what he means by race to the bottom. We must stop from some point.
I really
so
think
maybe the NDC should be the first to start with, whilst it is in opposition, to stop.
Yes,
hoping that when the NDC gets the opportunity to come to power, the opposition NPP then will also not.
And there are new standing orders that Parliament is looking at. You know, is there a way to do something about boycotts and so on within the rules of Parliament?
You think there's a way?
Well, I think we should explore it.
Is it possible to use standing orders to stifle or take away your constitutional and human rights?
No. Well, that's some of the parliamentary is just based on practice, you know, and so on. But nobody can stop you from, you know, boycotting process, right? You will violate parliamentary rules, but it's a protest, right? But the point is that, is there a way in which you can, as he's saying, normal parliamentary business? Yeah, we disagree on a tax bill or whatever it is, we might use that. But you can't do that for a State of a Nation address, or you can't do that for this kind of. This is still Parliament's rules.
Okay.
So there is a way in which we can address that. But at the end, we have to be Democrats. If we are not invested in this democratic system, then we must well forget it. No matter how many rules we put in place, we'll keep violating it, undermining all of that. My last point.
The standing orders and the Constitution says you cannot cross carpet, not literally speaking. They crossed carpet. They went to take their seats.
No, but that was not crossing.
I just wanted to draw your attention and just refer to what happened in the U.S. recently, you know, after the impeachment process, when President Trump had to go and deliver his State of the Union. There was a suggestion that, you know, Congress could have used their majority to block him from even delivering that, because it's toxic. You know, there's the toxic. But at the end, you need to respect these institutions, because once that crumble, what is the avenue for holding you together?
And Nancy made a statement. He tore up the
so even at that space, yes, and if it, right, and people, you know, are upset about that, right? But the point is that they did not prevent him from coming to deliver the State of the, because you need the sanctity of those kinds of.
She mentioned, though, that there is an alternative, but the alternative would have been worse.
Yeah, so it's just to make the point that we need to build these institutions.
Okay.
And some of these things are symbolic. And once you begin to devalue them, then you lose the certainty of the democratic practice.
The majority, some of the members, including ESLA, have been heard saying that the minorities will not be allowed to come back to the House and debate the statement.
That's the point. If we keep going, and as Kojo is saying, if you take that approach...
Is there basis for that in the first place?
No, because if you accept that was wrong, then the worst you can do is to ride on that to commit even more wrongs.
Okay.
Because they also represent Ghanaians in Parliament, and they need to be there to debate.
Yeah. Yes. What do you say? And Kojo says that this must be the last resort, and it must be done with good reason. He actually says you need the right forum. What you have heard the minority raise as the reasons, are they not good reasons justifying such a forum?
There can never be, in real essence, a justification for a thing like this. And when Kojo made those final statements, I was hoping... Oh, okay. The minister. When the minister for information, Mr. Oponkroma, made those final statements, I was hoping he would follow through and hoping he had the mandate and authority here to state that MPP will never do a thing like this anymore. But you see, my other brother Kojo...
Can you give that assurance? Are you in a capacity to give that assurance?
I will not be in a capacity to give that assurance. No. I mean, I'm being very honest and objective. I wouldn't want to see us do that ever again. But I don't know how long I'm going to be in Parliament. I don't know what they are going to do.
But you could give us your personal commitment to work towards that.
I mean, I would not encourage any such action. I've been quite clear with it. I would not encourage any such action.
I'll explain why I'm going there. Okay. And my brother Kojo was making the point that, look, it's a race to the bottom. That's extremely important. What we have done...
A race to the bottom which started when?
But that's where I'm going. You see, I'm trying really not to read too much history. But honestly, this started from the Consultative Assembly. When, more or less, the legal minds who tended to congregate in one section boycotted the Constitution altogether. Now, that has become a vicious cycle, has ended up in Parliament, and now we are racing to the bottom. I do it, you do it, I do it, you do it. Now, we can start a virtuous cycle. Okay? When they go low, go high. We can start a virtuous cycle. So that's my preaching to Kojo and John and the rest, that let's start a virtuous cycle by somebody declaring we will never do this. Let me tell you why it is important. One of the most important things that get lost, the first things that get missing with failed states is the denigration of state ceremonies. When you see these march past, people marching, when you see these ceremonies of state, where the Chief Justice comes dressed up and whatever, it looks like it is frivolous. It is not. No, it's not. It is a representation of the state. And your ability to carry that out.
Connect with it.
Okay, yes, and connect with it. The ability to bring the whole nation together in those rituals of state, those ceremonies of state, is really a testament to the stability and viability of the nation. So please, when you do these things, you just undermine everything. And let nobody take it lightly. It may not be much in one sense, but it's an embarrassment. Okay, at least to the person who is delivering the speech. But all that said and done, let's be clear. These are ceremonies of state, rituals of state. They come out of conventions, they come out of, working things over time, which is why they underline the fact that you're a state. But they are not legally required. Article 67, which is the legal basis for this, it says that the president shall, at the beginning of each session of Parliament and before a dissolution of Parliament, deliver to Parliament a message on the state of the nation. I hold the view that the president does not have to go to Parliament to read. It says deliver to Parliament. The president can choose to send them a letter. And it says shall at the beginning and before the end, at any point. So the Constitution gives you some latitude for you to build these ceremonies of state in. So when the president moves his seat, and even that convoy that he comes with, those ceremonies of state, they infuse the rest of us with a sense of patriotism and nationhood. It is not for nothing. So back to the point, please. You people who like to walk in, walk out. I think citizens have come to the point where we now see it as a minor irritation that politicians are prone to do. And so, oh, they've walked out. Okay, what next? It's not good enough. So speaking from that point of view, it would be nice for one of you to decide that we will not do this anymore. Or at least pick some ceremonies of state and elevate them to the point where they will not be affected by these irritations. But essentially they are irritations. And I hear when they finish, they went to watch, in their offices. So the essence of that thing, I think, it's not lost on anybody, but it's just the drama of it.
By the Constitution, the president, once elected, enjoys the full powers of the president and exercising them as the executive in the absence of anything, unless otherwise determined that he's not properly elected. This 2013 one that they bring in, and to the rationalization they give to it, is it justified?
No, I mean, but again, I started by saying it's not about the reasons they give, and like Ojo said, they give you many reasons, and the Minister of Information is saying, oh, they have too many reasons, they do this. Why can't they have all those reasons to say, because of all these things, we will not sit there? I think they have a legitimate right, but the fundamental point, I think, is this. When people feel that they are not being listened to, when people feel that the other party has decided that whatever you say, we will do what we want to do, when they feel frustrated and they feel like they've used every option, take the EC matter, which they've raised as a reason, okay? In the face of real, serious information, okay, we have a situation where we told, and the gentleman who sat here the last time said, we're going to go ahead and do it anyway, okay? When you have a situation like that, people feel like rebelling. So for me, the reason is not necessarily a justification, but the fact that they get to the point where they have a series of things where they feel they've hit a block and they are not going to be listened to, they have few things left than to rebel. It's the same thing that drives citizens onto the streets. So for me, honestly, it is a legitimate tool of protest in parliament everywhere in the world. What I hope we will do is to create a virtuous cycle, elevate some ceremonies of state beyond these partisanship, shenanigans, okay, and then hold them sacrosanct. Now, the other side should also appreciate.
How can you be heard to say it's a legitimate tool of protest, and at the same time say this should not happen?
Well, because I'm saying legitimate tool of protest, when you feel like you will not be heard, your views will not be countenanced, the person has executive power and a majority in parliament, and so whatever you say, they will not listen, then you don't have any option than to protest. I'm also saying that even though you have that right to protest, okay, we, the citizens of this country, are affected by it in all kinds of ways. If you start denigrating state ceremonies, you are making us look like a failed state. It is that serious. And state ceremonies do not have to be tied in law. Look, the British, none of their ceremonies is tied in any law. But they've worked this over so many years. Look at the pageantry.
The reasons they
so
give,
please don't do it even if you feel...
The reasons they give, do you find them valid enough, cogent enough to use this as the forum? They talk about, the tyranny of the president, and that he's simply not listening, he's ignoring on very important issues. They've spoken about the Ayawaso Commission report. They've spoken about, of course, Kojopon refers us to the white paper. They spoke about a number of things, including the very recent trade fair matter of Raymond Archer's, factory together with machines demolished.
So you can have many reasons why.
But they've explained that they didn't destroy any machines. I think we have to check that fact.
They didn't
destroy any machines. You should
They destroyed portions of the building.
Yeah,
you can have many reasons why you feel aggrieved. But words like tyranny cannot be properly used in a democracy like this. The people of this country decided to elect President Akufo-Addo and give him the powers he has. You are in parliament. If you want to change those powers, change them. The people of this country decided that we'll give the MPP a majority in parliament. We have given them the power. How they use this is their prerogative until the next 4 years. So I disagree with the use of words like tyranny. Go to court or whatever. I have my problems with, for instance, what's going on with the EC and so many other things. And the number of times we go to court on different things. Again, it's nation building. Please, if you feel you are not being heard, go and campaign hard. Regain your majority in parliament. Campaign hard, become the president next time. But words like tyranny, etc. Look, whatever the NDC feels they are aggrieved by, I don't think anybody has broken any law. So again, my point is, you may have a reason why you are upset and want to protest, but I want to let them reflect on the fact that this is not just about them. It has an effect on the rest of the nation. Okay. So they should choose and pick. This is not, for me, one of the best ways to do it. Use other things, but let's elevate some ceremonies of state above partisan bickering.
And did you say go to court also?
Yes, go to court.
So
use
they
other
go
means.
to court on their disagreement with the Ayawaso thing. We have heard some judge say he would take an action about that on the white paper. They should go to court on the Electoral Commission.
No, I think
their disagreement they have with the Electoral Commission. They should go to court on the issues that they have with media freedom. They say is under attack.
It's not just about going to court, one, but yes, going to court. You see, the judges and the justices are the supervisors of the realm. When you have problems that you can't resolve between yourself, you go to court. The problem is the time issues and all those other things. But
you were in the lead on Occupy Flagstaff House.
Yes, yes.
Why didn't you go to court? Why didn't you advise?
Well, because that was a demonstration. That's also another legitimate approach to voicing, your protest. But my point is this: use the whole gamut of options, including protest. I'm simply saying, and I've said two things. It is legitimate. You can do it when you're frustrated, you're not being listened to. But it is also important that you select and appreciate that some ceremonies of state should be elevated above. It's not just court. Demonstrations are part of it. RTI is part of it. Do everything legal, but don't talk about tyranny.
Okay.
We're
so
in a democracy.
All things may be good. You may have a right to them, but not all things are beneficial.
Yes, exactly.
Just a quick
before
Jennifer comes. Also, I mean, these are very important. It's not to belittle the issues that the NDC has raised, all the issues that. But what I was
very serious issues.
Yes, but what I was saying is that there are actually openings, because you see, we have to resolve these issues. We cannot ignore them.
The EC has literally closed the door, shut it.
No, but even the issue about voter suppression, how are you going to, even if we're going to have a new register,
potential voters?
Sure, that is the
reference to US State Department.
That is the fear.
We'll ask for the evidence of that.
That is the fear. But you see, how do you address it? You see, there has to be a resolution to it. Okay. What assurances is needed to make sure that somebody doesn't feel that people in their stronghold. So these openings are there. We should pursue them, but we shouldn't give up, or throw our hands in the air. And it's not that nobody is listening, or because as Kofi is saying, it's not that people are all of these issues that have been raised. He is very much, following the EC register issue. Kodeo is involved. All kinds of people are involved. So it's not that the avenues are closed for people to listen.
So EC has closed it. They've told us whatever we say.
All right, thank you. Do it. Thank you. Now let's get to John, and all of you have done like 10 minutes each. Let's go to John too and see how he now, having listened to all of you, will be able to justify what they did and what will happen going forward.
Well, thank you, Samson. Thank you, and good morning. First of all, the question to ask is that what we did, is it legal or not? That's the first thing. Because we've all been talking about, the president, what he did is legal. What that person did is legal. So settle the legal issue. And I'm happy my brother concedes that these are legitimate legal tools available to members of parliament. Check the British Parliament and check even the history of the British Parliament. And you'll come to the conclusion that this is legal. Kojo tries to draw a dichotomy and try to put it as if theirs was right, ours was wrong. If you listen to him, he says that they have a basis, and to the extent that they have a basis, they were within their rights to pursue that cause.
But on hindsight, he says he would not encourage it.
You cannot say that you had a right, you were right in pursuing it, and then turn around and say that on hindsight, you will not encourage it. You would not encourage something that is wrong. If something is right, if something is legitimate, if you have justification and good cause for pursuing a course of action, you cannot turn around and say that you wouldn't encourage it. To the extent that you wouldn't encourage it, it then means that it was wrong. And you see, I've been looking at the records to dig into what exactly they did. And there's been an attempt to present it as if they just boycotted Parliament and that we walked out. And Kojo says that the judiciary were there, the maze was there, the staff was there. Go to 2013 and listen or read about what the MPs did in 2013. They came to the chamber, took their seats. The speaker, then Speaker Doajaho, performed the prayers. The president arrived, took his seat. The ceremony, like you say, is that on arrival, the president takes a seat. Then the speaker, after prayers, invites the leadership of both sides to go and usher in the president.
The president hadn't arrived.
Can I, if you want, I'll read it for you.
No. Just the factual inaccuracy is what I'm correcting.
When President Mahama arrived and prayers were said, are you listening? The speaker, Mr. Edward Joe Ajaho, invited the majority and minority leaders to join him to escort the president into the chamber. And when the two left their seats and walked with the speaker out of the chamber, the impression was created that there will be no boycott. Suddenly, and to the surprise of all present, the minority started walking out of the chamber. And as they did, they pulled out plain sheets and shouted, "Stealers! Corruption!" As they strode out of the chamber, they were booed by the majority. What is the difference?
Where are you reading from?
Peace FM Online.
Okay.
Peace FM Online. And there's another one from The Independent. However, while the MPP were walking out of the house, this another is online. I mean, this is record for everybody to. So you cannot.
So it's sort of the same template.
No, I'm coming there. I'm building a point. And so this issue of we did it differently, you did it differently, is neither here nor there. There's an issue, let's confront it head on. Can we do that as members of parliament? And it shouldn't be left to members of parliament alone. And I'm happy independent-minded people are commenting on this matter. And I'm even happy that in ending, Kojo says that this is the time for all of us to begin to build bridges and to discuss these issues. Not just about the boycott, but about the issues we are raising.
Sure, cool.
What the EC is doing, is it proper? Is it right? Life is not all about what is legal. It's not all about what is legal. If a policeman arrests you today and takes you to cells and locks you up for 24 hours and releases you, he's performing his duty.
What the EC is doing, is it proper? Is it right?
Think
That's the
it's
question.
Improper, yes.
Once you say it's improper, it's not right, that must be
No.
it.
Once we say it's improper, the EC must not take a belligerent stand. And from all indication, the EC has taken a belligerent stand. And they've made pronouncements that irrespective of what even their own commission, the body they established.
Recommended.
No, even before, they said that irrespective of what they say, they will proceed.
The reasons they gave are sound to some people. That they are not sound to you does not mean the process must end.
It's not just about it. I'm saying they've taken an intransigent and a belligerent position. They are not even ready to engage. And like Kofi said, if there's no avenue, if there's no opportunity for us to even discuss the issues, what do you expect the minority to do? Take the Ayawaso issue. We've discussed it here. Samson, every independent-minded person, look, take NDC MPP out, will tell you that what is happening is improper. Nobody has been held liable. Nobody has been held accountable.
Sam Georgia has announced on the anniversary of that event that he's going to.
Oh, that's his. I'm dealing with the state. The state belongs to all of us. The Short Commission recommended that disband that force. That force has not been disbanded. Then I go to Parliament and see those people in Parliament.
But that's a
They
recommendation that government
disagree with the
disagrees
recommendation of the Ayawaso West Wagon Commission by the white paper. So you cannot expect an implementation of a recommendation they disagree with.
And I have every legitimate right as a member of Parliament to disagree with the white paper.
The way to disagree with the white paper
Mr.
is to go to court to impugn it.
Can I make a point?
Yes, go ahead.
The way to disagree with a constitutionally mandated body like the EC announcing President Mahama, like the Chief Justice swearing President Mahama in, is to go to court. And when you go to court, you have no business pursuing the course of action they pursued. Kojo says that they didn't want to do anything to legitimize President Mahama's presidency.
Quick point of
When
information.
MPs...
Wait.
Very important to this. Look,
Okay.
the white paper cannot disagree with the position of law.
the Short Commission reminded the government that those groups are illegal. They can't disagree with that.
And the way to change that is through court. That's what I meant.
No, that's why I said,
I'll come there. Even the court, I'll come there.
Illegal means it has to abate immediately. You can't form a force outside.
They say they won't listen to you. They have a white paper.
That's why. So the white.
The only way you can
they won't listen to it. We wouldn't also listen to him.
Okay. With the position of law, they can disagree with the commission's recommendations.
Right.
They were reminded of the legal situation now that force is illegal. So that they can't disagree.
So
can
I implement?
Yes, please.
So you won't do anything to legitimize President Mohammed's presidency. But when they came into office, and the Minister of Finance asked and requested MPs to fill forms, proceed to take pictures for their salaries to be paid, that one they legitimized it. When it came to their salaries, and the president asked that fill forms, bring them to me so we can process your salaries, they legitimized that one. It was nothing but a political tool. That is a fact. Now, then I like your point that the president says he won't listen. He won't listen to the Short Commission. He's issued a white paper. He won't disband them. He will bring them to Parliament. The MP was assaulted. He was manhandled. Nothing will happen until the right things are done. The minority side, led by the Venerable Haruna Idrisu, will not equally listen to President Akufo-Addo. And I like the suggestion that let's begin to discuss the issues.
You say what
You
they
can't
did
go to court
was wrong, and you have my panelists agree that what they did was wrong. So why are you doing the same thing and being okay with it?
I'm building a point. I'll deal with that. I am happy that all of us are now suggesting that we should begin to discuss these issues so that when we build consensus, that both sides, irrespective of the challenges, one, we can use other alternatives, but more importantly, would open avenues for discussion and for dealing with these matters. I'm sure it would make progress. Look, this has ignited a lot of discussion. When they boycotted in 2013, I monitored the airwaves. A lot of people said it was consistent. Some people today who are condemning the minority, I listened to them. Unfortunately, you were not in politics at that time.
No.
What was your... Okay, I don't want to put you... I don't want to be personal.
I did not express a view
Someone
on
has advised me not to get personal on this.
I did not express a view on it.
You did not?
No, I did not.
But today you want to express a view.
But,
fantastic. Thank you.
But then I was
Let that be public.
you referred in your press conference or statement, you referred to a U.S. State Department report which buttresses your point about trying to use the new register to suppress votes.
Yes.
The only portion of that report you can refer to is page 13, which says the June ouster of the Electoral Commission chairperson and the president's subsequent stacking of the Electoral Commission with persons considered to be biased in favor of the ruling party raised questions about whether the body might be used to stifle voter registration among the opposition's base.
Yes.
This is a suspicion, raising questions. This is not fact.
We would not wait to get there and get our fingers bent before we begin to raise alarm. We will begin to raise the alarm bells now. And a doctor said we should campaign hard. Doc, we will campaign hard. We are determined to give of our best. But if the processes leading to the election is flawed, it's not free, it's not fair, does not engender confidence, irrespective of the campaigning we undertake, it would come to naught. And so when we raise these issues, the U.S. has no interest in terms of the political divide. But they are telling us that they're stacking.
No, the U.S. hasn't said that.
The June ouster of the Electoral Commission chairperson and the president's subsequent stacking of the Electoral Commission with persons considered to be biased. This is the USA in it. To use the word stacking. Fine, but you said the US didn't say that, and I'm saying that the US said that. If you want to interpret it, it's another matter. But you said the US did not say that, and I'm putting it to you and reading verbatim that the US said that.
If you want to, there's going to be what?
The US says that, and the subsequent stacking
but you
of the Electoral Commission. Look, if you want us to interpret it, you can have a different. I have no problem if you have a different interpretation, and I have a different interpretation.
No, in the US, they have worse problems than we even have.
So they say
have no problem.
that raised questions about whether the body might be used to stifle voter registration among opposition.
So therefore, the fact that they are raising it means that there's an issue to deal with. If they didn't find it credible,
they are talking about the fact that you are raising questions.
Who? They didn't say that I raised it. They haven't said, no, don't interpret it the way.
But you can interpret it
the way you want me to interpret it.
You can interpret it.
No, don't compel me to interpret the way you want.
So your next issue.
But let me build on that.
Your next issue, you talk about freedom of the press and closure of radio stations.
Yes.
Is that the forum to address that issue?
It's one of the...
Radio Gold, Radio XYZ.
Yes, it's one of the reasons we raised.
Tongo, which was closed recently. They were giving reasons. Are you not satisfied? Are they not going through the processes? Some have gone before the electronic tribunal at the NCA, and they have lost their case.
We've raised several issues. And in fact, I put my weight even on the Ayawaso issue. That if I see a colleague member of parliament...
You have addressed that. We are asking about your other issues. We want you to show why these are so important that...
Samson, and you made a point that can you go to court? Life is not all about going to court. No, we are rational human beings. Look, recently, the Bank of Ghana raised the minimum capital requirement of banks to 400 million. 7 local banks couldn't meet that. They fell short of the law. And yet, the Bank of Ghana decided that it wouldn't shut those banks down because it is not in the national interest. And so the fact that there's been an infraction doesn't mean that you must kill an ant with a sledgehammer. We must use our brains, we must use our minds. These are legitimate issues we are raising. Look, if we want to codify everything in this country, if we want to implement the law to the letter, I tell you, we probably would have a very difficult system. And so in the interest of accountability, in the interest of press freedom, we hold the view that that approach was heavy-handed and would err. We prefer to be criticized. We prefer even to err against the law on the side of the press and on the side of the media.
What we would like to hear is to say, in a time when you are in government, you will never do a thing
we never did that. And the records are there to show that we did not
do that. Once you are in government, there's no motivation to do that, right?
But they are in government and there's that motivation for them to do that. Who were in government, we never had that motivation.
To do what?
To shut down those radio stations.
But government has not shut down radio stations.
That's what I'm saying.
For no reason whatsoever.
What did the minister say?
Samson,
could you ask you a question? Could you ask you a question?
It's the ministry that shut
Could you ask you a question? Sorry, could you ask you a question? Sorry, gentlemen, could you ask you a question? That there are various institutions, they may be agencies of the state, that are responsible for all of these things you complain about. Why do you put the blame at the doorstep of the president?
Take, for example, if I just may, take, for example, the EC's decision to compile a new register.
And the closure of radio stations.
The president has taken a position.
But
he's done that.
But the president cannot
He hasn't even demonstrated independence in that matter.
But that is not true. That is not true. That is not true. For example.
Didn't you hear the president say go and register?
For example.
You didn't hear the president say that in Parliament?
For example. The EC has on its own said that it will compile a new register.
From April.
Imani, for example, disagrees with the EC. Yeah. There are political parties that disagree with the EC. There are parties that agree with the EC.
One.
Say again?
One party.
The MPP agrees with the EC.
Yes,
there have been several other parties also that have also joined. Oh, please.
Not in law and reality.
You now decide who's a party and who's not a party.
Not decide.
Let's not go there. But here's the point. If you are of the view that your position is so strong, there are acceptable legal ways of ventilating those views and even getting redress. If indeed you believe that the EC is wrong. There have been times when, for example, when we were in opposition, when we thought that the EC's use of an NHIA card as a basis to compile the register was flawed. What did we do? We went for a declaration from the apex court.
When you were against the voters
register,
you didn't go to court.
What did we do?
Voters register, did you go to court?
What did we hit the street? We hit the streets and nothing stopped you from hitting the streets.
But you don't.
That is legal.
You don't prescribe what
we haven't said we are prescribing for you. We are saying that you can go on demonstration. It's part of the process. Nobody has an issue with that.
All right.
But when you
So
say
let's come to a resolution.
You are actually done
more than 10 minutes.
when you say that, no, I mean, I just wanted a quick rebuttal. When you say that
landing.
you are now going to disrupt an Article 67 obligation because of that, that is where we raise issue. But however, we have said that, listen, we need to begin to quickly do the things that make us. And now, for example, if you say that the EC says it is not ready to engage, that's not true. The EC has engaged with you, has sat down with you, other groups, and has said, I have heard you, and I disagree with you. Why do you think that, as for you, when you have a particular view, that must be upheld?
Thank you.
And that
Thank
the
you.
EC cannot disagree
Thank
with
you.
you.
So the issue, the question I ask you, that's the one you should respond to now, so that we close this chapter, about the reference to specific institutions that are dealing with the various matters that you are talking about, and yet you are blaming the president for it.
I'm saying that if you take the EC, for instance, the president has taken a position. He's taken a position with the EC. And we have taken a counter position. So the two of us...
So it means the president is doing it.
Sorry.
Can I make
Could you wait?
We had variance with each other. And like you asked, the voters register, when the MPP wanted a new voters register, there was an option of a court.
Sorry, so you say
They
that
chose to
you
go
say
on
the
a
president has taken a position.
If we choose to go on a walkout,
Sorry.
what is illegal about it?
Sorry, you say the president
Don't
has taken
understand
a
what-
position. Can we have a conversation, a dialogue? You say the president has taken a position because in the State of the Nation address, he said, when the register is opened, go and register. That's the position he has taken.
The NPP...
That's the first time we have heard the president on it, right?
I'm saying that the MPP and the president is a member of the MPP. The MPP has taken a position on this matter to say that they want it. And that irrespective of what we are saying,
What's wrong with
the
that?
EC should go ahead.
What's
So
wrong
what is
with
wrong
that?
with ours too? What is wrong with theirs? What is wrong with ours?
Why should you be listening to whilst they should not be?
Why should they be listening to whilst we will not be listening to?
So you see the irritation on the
You
side.
talk about the closure of radio stations and the killing of journalists, Swale,
By
and
the way,
so on.
including stations that are believed to be
sorry.
pro-MPP stations.
To be whatever. That one too, is it the president you want to address those issues?
Look, we have stated clearly that we would err on the side of the media. We believe that there should be press freedom. We believe that the closure of those radio stations was heavy-handed, was unfair, and was not proper. And it was one of the reasons why we staged that walkout. We want to send a message to the rest of Ghanaians and to the president. And I expected that if President Mahama was president and this went on, even if he cannot direct, he would play a role, intervene, add his voice so that the radio stations will be back on air. That is what a future President Mahama would do. If President Akufo-Addo will not do that, that is his cup of tea. President Mahama will do that and support the press and support the media.
That just like in the banking sector, regulations and laws are being flouted and you looked on. In the media sector, the radio stations, some of them had defaulted over a decade, had not paid their subscriptions, and you looked on. You say you chose that option to enhance media freedoms. Is that the best way to go about things?
If I am in government, the first thing I would do would be to remind the radio stations, to write to them and to remind them. I wouldn't pursue that draconian policy.
I think that was
if
done.
I am minister, no, that was not done. Check well whether the radio stations were written to. And if I am Minister of Communication,
they were written to and asked to pay up, except
fact,
that paying up at once
in fact,
was,
some even
was
sent
a
us
bit
two
complex
checks.
to them.
I think that was
then
done.
they
we would
went
not
to
do
court.
that.
Yes,
We
that
would
was
not
done.
do that as a government. We would not advocate for that.
Okay.
And if I'm Minister of Communications and such a thing happened, the first thing I would do is to empathize with the radio stations, is to add a voice and to plead that we ameliorate the situation. Take the EC. And like you said, the political parties are flouting the laws.
Okay.
Are they meeting the minimum requirement required of a political party?
Good question.
Has
though.
the EC sanctioned them? Has the EC struck their names out?
Okay.
Is that not illegal?
But should that be encouraged?
No, and that is why I'm saying that the law is made for man. Man is not made for the law. And that when such things happen, also use some rational element in order to address
That you
those
see
issues.
people flouting
That is
the
our
law.
position, and
All
we
right.
would not move from that
Okay,
position.
thank you very much. So now the resolution, as we all understand, is that the debates everybody should be allowed to go into the debate. Is that not so? Just 1 minute, could you?
Because that is the spirit of what Article 67 seeks to engender. Some of these sideline dramas, we must begin to move from it. I hear reference to other jurisdictions. You should ask about when was the last time you saw some of these boycotts and some of these things in some of these advanced democracies. They are all moving forward. We should move.
But
You are saying that in fact you cannot be prevented from debating it.
It's not about anybody allowing anybody.
So those saying that are in the
Nobody can
form,
stop anybody from going through that debate.
It cannot happen on the floor.
I have said that you have heard. But why?
Esla is a lawyer. You're saying
How
she
is
doesn't
she going
know
to
the
No,
law.
no, no.
Let's
It's
not
not
tell us
about. It's not about. It's not
Tell us how
about
Esla is
illegal
going to
disruption.
prevent us.
It's about what?
It is not about illegal disruption. Those who have spoken, okay, have articulated the fact that they would also disrupt, like they disrupted. They will also disrupt any attempt by the minority.
Then there will be no debate.
I'm coming. I'm
There will
coming.
be no
I'm coming.
debate.
And all of us are encouraging that that
it's
will
important.
not be proper.
All right.
Good. It's not just about proper.
Okay.
See, I think the disruption of a proper parliamentary process by even a member of parliament,
Yes.
except where you have a clear case where it's a protest, can be an affront against
Yes,
parliament.
the standing
You can be in
orders doesn't
contempt
even
of
allow
parliament.
You
And
can't do that.
That's different from a protest. Okay? You can protest, but you can't
Would
protest
he
in
have
some places
succeeded in
court.
disrupting it?
All right.
He would have succeeded, just like
All
what
right.
we did.
So I'm saying let's-
But we are getting to the point where we are saying that
No,
it
but
is
it's
not
not
healthy.
anybody.
All right.
It's
Well,
not healthy.
yes.
We should
so,
move forward.
so
That's
as we
the
take the break here,
Minister,
I have a little interest
I
in
agree with
one
you
of the
as well.
aspects. Do you think that some of the issues they raise, the president should be heard saying something about them? Should be making some interventions by his speech?
Some of the issues that have been raised are quite dicey and sensitive issues.
Like
I mean,
the radio stations matters. Should the
Well,
president be saying something?
No,
about
I don't think the president should interfere in that. I mean, for me, if you take what MPP's issue about compiling a new register in 2015 and so on and so forth, there has to be a forum where, you know, outside of all the noise and so on, where you can discuss issues. How do I prevent voter suppression if there's going to be a compilation of a new register?
Actually, the law allows, but we'll get there.
Yeah,
but we have to have that discussion.
and it's not even illegal. That's what I agree with John. That a lot of these issues is not just about the law. It's about even people having a shared understanding of what the problem is. Because if you have some phantom idea about, you know, people being sort of prevented from whatever, we need to understand how would that actually occur if somebody was to attempt it, so that we can put in the measures to stop it.
Okay.
But if we cannot even sit down and have that discussion, that becomes a problem.
That's a race
so
to the
let's work through these matters.
Thank you.
It's not
you
just
share the
about
same view.
having
The
a
president
problem.
should not be speaking about some of these matters. He shouldn't be making
I
any
think the
interventions.
president has made statements around these matters. If you take things like the radio stations, etc., I think the president should stay out of those areas.
Okay.
But the vigilantism one,
There
I
are areas to
we'll
which I
probably
think the
talk about
president
that
is duty bound.
Yeah.
And I say duty bound. For instance, disbanding those illegal militias. He has no choice. And to the extent that he gives the impression that he is not minded to do so, I am terribly disappointed.
Let me quickly
this
react to
goes
that.
to the fundamental
Let me quickly react to
structure
that.
of our state.
You think the closure of radio stations is a small matter that the president should not be saying
So
anything
I didn't.
about?
Let me make this point. Innocent slips against the law should be distinguished from plain impunity.
Yeah.
When you have a situation that runs in a number of years and people take the position that because of where we are, we don't have to obey the law, I support the closure of those radio stations. And I think the NDC should have sent a signal in their time that this is wrong. That was impunity.
Thank you. Could you 30 seconds?
By the way, in 2009, check what they did to Choice FM. Here's my point. When the government white paper says that we do not agree with the Commission of Enquiry's view that the SWAT team, which has been there from about 2010, which is simply a composition of already existent elements from the military and the police that have been put together. And by the way, when they went to the commission, they made a distinguishing factor between the bona fide members of the SWAT teams and then these operatives or informants in khaki, etc., who were with them. Now, the recommendation that the SWAT team should be disbanded is explained clearly in the government white paper that this SWAT team you are talking about is an embodiment of people from police, military, etc., who be put together. For example, when we're going for elections, you know we have an embodiment of what we call the Election Security Task Force, which brings together people like that.
Is that a militia?
Under whose command?
But that is
That's
based on
important.
no.
Those informants holding weapons.
That's
The
important.
the commission says that's an infraction.
The people you are
Called informants.
Who
Why were they
commands
holding
what?
weapons?
Who commands what?
No, you should tell me.
Is he a civilian? It's not. The commander was there. Azuku
Why
was there.
were the
It should
informants
not.
holding
Azuku
weapons?
was there. You're asking me about under whose command.
Why
Azuku
was
was there.
body of-
So
all
our
right,
disagreement
holding
is clearly explained. Now, secondly, it is not that they have made a declaration on a matter of law. And once the commission make a declaration on a matter of law, everybody is bound to agree with that declaration that they have made. They have expressed an opinion. The government has agreed with that opinion. If you believe, just was done. I mean, World Cup, they came with a commission, report came. They disagreed with some parts of it and explained it in the white paper.
An opinion
if
that
you
resonates with the majority of
doesn't
Ghanaians.
matter. If you believe
is what the government.
the majority of
voted.
Americans
Informants
believe
holding
that they
weapons.
should invade Iraq at a
They've
point in
so-called
time.
informants.
The
Okay,
fact
we
that
take
the
a break.
majority believe they didn't make it right.
About the
The fact that the
position
commission
of the law.
Okay,
It
we'll
didn't
be
make
right
it
back.
right.
We'll be
It
right
didn't
back
make
to
it
deal
right.
with various
It didn't
other
make it right.
sectors of the State of the Nation address.
If you don't find favor with that one, you find a legally admissible. You get the government.